All right, we got the Hong Kong is a Dystopia by the Invisible Hand. I'm always a big fan of these like private, like individual journalist type guys because who wouldn't want to see something like this, you know? Um, Sometimes you can't get everything from media, but I know Hong Kong is like a very weird, unique situation because I believe it was sometime in the 90s. Don't quote me on that. I believe it was sometime in like the 80s or 90s. I know it's Margaret Thatcher. She signed like a bill pretty much over the course of like 40 years, 30 years, giving it back over time to China. Even though they would be kind of weirdly autonomous for a bit in China, but I do know over the last like 10 years, so pretty much since like we'll say since like 2016 or whatever, they've been definitely going after some of the liberties and rights in Hong Kong. I know from China at least that's what they've been slowly kind of incorporating it more back into the mainland. Um, but part of the reason why I was able to be so successful was because it was part of the capitalist world. It was its own thing separate to China, and that's why it's kind of has its own culture, way of life, and things. But we're already kind of seeing in this little clip bit here because I kind of turned on the first 9 seconds of it. It's interesting. Hong Kong is a different place, and I think for most Americans and for maybe some Europeans, I can't really speak too much on that, but I know for sure most Americans. I don't know how much we know. How I mean, if it starts out the video calling it a dystopia, I mean, I think it's interesting. Like what makes this thing a dystopia? Um, I can already probably throw some guesses on. Probably easily some elite, some type of rich people controlling probably like everything in the town, which is like again thinking about the size of Hong Kong. Which let me see if I can pull up a map of it. I'm sure the guy's probably gonna. He's probably gonna. Let's see. Map of Hong Kong. If I can spell, that'd be nice. Reading disability and spelling, it's like my great perks. Alright, let's see. Let's pull up a map here. Oh, can I zoom on this? Jamie, zoom. How do I zoom Jamie? Oh, there we go. Yeah, not really the greatest showing, but here's a little map. So, I mean, right here in this little top part, that's all China. China, Hong Kong. So, I do know that this road here has been, I think this is the main highway or the main road. That has been a lot of contention here. I know they blocked this border off. I know there's so much security checkpoints going into here. But yeah, if that doesn't give people like a visual, like this is how big it is. Like it's not really, Hong Kong is not a big place. Let me see if I can pull it up compared to China. I'm a visual person. I believe in visually showing people. It makes my life easier, and also it helps out. Like I think, God, like it just here. Let's zoom in on this too, so you guys can see it. All right, let's pull this over too. So we got Beijing right there, Hong Kong down there. And just to go a little more side by side, like do you see? So Hong Kong is not a big place. I mean, and it's been kind of isolated in a sense from the mainland. So yeah, there's some little context there for people.
Hong Kong is the most expensive property market in the world.
Oh, well, there you go, yeah.
Telecommunications are all in the hands of a wealthy elite who also dominate the property sector.
What you are looking at is not a prison cell, but somebody's home. In an area of just 2 square meters, about the same size as a phone booth, is one of Hong Kong's infamous coffin homes. With one shared bathroom between 20 people, these are not outliers. Across the small one shared bathroom between 20 people. These are not outliers. Across the small city, more than 200,000 people live in conditions like this. This is the harsh reality of a city that has simply run out of space, leaving thousands with no choice but to live in cages. In Hong Kong, the average home costs 18 times the average family income.
By the way, for like if you want to have like how it should be like I think 2.5 times your paycheck to buy a home. Now, yeah, no, it should be 2.5 times your paycheck. Historically. Nowadays, it ain't so much because you look at LA, it's 9.5. San Francisco, 9.2. San Jose's that high. I did not know that. Sydney is 12.2. Holy crap, how do people live there?
This is the worst housing crisis in the world. But while all this has been
like
happening,
any other time in human history, you literally would have been able to buy a house at like 23. My grandfather, this would have been 1940s, late 1940s, early 1950s. Because my uncle served in World War II, and he couldn't. So my grandfather couldn't go to war because he was the last son, and they had that rule in place in the United States. So he didn't end up going to war, but he ended up being a door-to-door salesman. I mean, I don't remember exactly what he sold, but it was just, he just was a door-to-door salesman. That was a thing back in the day, and he made about, like, I think my grandmother told me $65 a week, something along that lines. And he ended up becoming very successful. I mean, probably one of the most honest, hardworking men I've ever known. Great man. You guys all would have probably loved him. But he busted his ass. He made $65 an hour, but he was able to buy a house for him and his mom at like 23. And then later he ended up beating my grandmother. And it was an easy showing, when you have a job, you're taking care of your mother, you got a house, It's easier to show off like that, maybe it makes it easier. It's like I'm just like, yeah, I'm bumming living in the mom's basement.
Another story
it's hard to brag that one.
Emerged. Last year, the wealthiest 10% of households in Hong Kong earned 82 times more than the poorest 10%. This figure has more than doubled in just 5 years.
Of course,
At
COVID.
the center of this are 4 families who dominate Hong Kong's real estate through their Big 4 conglomerates. With a combined net worth exceeding $100 billion, they control over half of Hong Kong's private housing, vast land reserves, and assets.
I will never understand why why governments allow that. Because part of it's like the private sector, and I get it, like, capitalism. But I'm just being like, I don't give a shit about how the rules are and how things are structured. That doesn't bother me. I'm looking at the issue here. And it's like, if you got 4 people controlling almost half of your housing market, how is that a good thing? How can people have a good place to live? How do you know if living conditions are going to be that good? Like, come on now. Like, this is where people want to trust the government to take care of this shit, but no one can.
Annual GDP. While millions are crammed into tight conditions,
like
the city's
dude,
6
you see
richest
that in like
property
movies.
tycoons
You
are
see those houses in
manipulating
Blade
land
Runner.
supply and driving prices even higher. But as we researched this topic more, we found that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Hong Kong appears to be a wealthy city, but behind the glittering skyrises,
I do want to visit
another
Hong
story
Kong.
of a dystopian country run by a few secretive individuals. This is the sad reality of Hong Kong. This is Kai, a 60-year-old cleaner in Hong Kong's Mong Kok district. For $300 a month, he gets to rent this bedbug-infected section, measuring just 20 square feet. For him, even this is preferable to eviction, with nowhere else to go, and no resettlement arrangements. For single applicants like him, the wait for public housing can stretch longer than 10 years.
People just want a fucking home. Is it so hard? Like, why has it become this political of an issue?
This situation didn't happen overnight.
Of course.
Hong Kong has a long history of poor living conditions. But to understand how one of Asia's richest cities forces so many to live in cages, we need to look back. Because decisions made decades ago have built this dystopian landscape.
I mean, I really respect every single one of those people who are making it work. I really do. Like, God, it's just like, how do we, like, we are in the 21st century. This is where I get annoyed with politics, right? And governments and everything. Because I look at simple things like, man, if we are in like, I'll say this: America should be the country to go over there and wave the wand and say, "Fix that. We don't. This is not what we do in this world. Fix your living standards. Fix your living conditions." But we can't do that when we're all fucked up here. Like, we are the best country in the world, and we can't even go around and spread our greatness to other nations and help them out because we can't even fix ourselves because we're too busy internally fighting. Like, how do you expect the world organizations like the UN and everything to come together and fix all these issues, which is what they, in my opinion, they should be there for, is to fix humanitarian issues and certain bullshit problems like this, not just how to cause a bunch of wars and how do we go to war with a bunch of different little nations. That's the thing. Like, people would trust these like United Nations and all these organizations like the EU and stuff if they actually did jobs. Now I get it. Like, how would the United States and the EU really like do anything here? This is more of China and this is Hong Kong at the end of the day. But we can at least bring it up as an issue. Like, we can start questioning things and going, why do we allow this in today's world? Every human on the planet should be having better living conditions. Instead of just moving people across continents and across like landscapes and totally changing up societies, why don't we help build up their areas? That's the thing. I want to see more work. Like, in a way, I want to see more of like us working together to help fix the world. Like, if countries team up and go, hey, look, this country's in a bad spot, let's go fix it. Like Hong Kong's housing issue, let's go help them out. But we can't do that when you got governments in the UK and you got governments in America forgetting its own citizens. So it's hard to fix everyone else when you can't even fix yourselves.
Hong Kong was born out
But
of war.
at the end of the day,
Britain
I say
didn't
that
commit-
whole take, but America's still the greatest country in the world because, yeah, our houses may be expensive, rent may be high, but even a house you may rent or an apartment you may rent, still going to be bigger than 20 feet.
Inherited. They took it. And with that
So,
seizure came
definitely
a
thankful.
new rule. As the British were essentially starting from scratch with disregard to who had owned what before,
Yeah, it
all
was a
land
British
would
island
instead
before.
be owned by the government and then leased to individuals and businesses. A decision made to be owned from scratch with disregard to who had owned what before, all land would instead be owned by the government and then leased to individuals and businesses. A decision made in 1841, which still controls the price of rent in 2025. After World War II, Hong Kong's strategic location and business-friendly policies sparked a rapid transformation. China had just experienced a revolution, and Hong Kong became a popular destination for migrants fleeing political turmoil in the mainland.
Of course, it's a free area.
Bringing in the entrepreneurial drive and cheap labour, something the locals were quick to take advantage of. By the 1950s and 60s, Hong Kong had become a manufacturing powerhouse, producing everything from textiles to electronics for exports. Hong Kong's economy exploded.
They did
Its
it all for
GDP
cheap.
multiplied 20-fold in less than 2 decades, transforming a coastal outpost into a capitalist powerhouse. It became a global trade hub, joining Taiwan, South Korea and Singapore as one of Asia's 4 tigers, the fastest growing economies in the region. But the faster a city grows, the more fragile its foundations become. By the 1980s, manufacturing had begun its inevitable decline. Companies were starting to move operations
Just like a lot
to
of
mainland China,
areas.
where labour was
Yep.
cheap and costs were lower. If they wanted to stay one step ahead, Hong Kong had to chase something different. They pivoted to finance. Having
course.
already established
A
themselves
lot. I
as
think Japan did the same thing in the 80s too. I mean, Japan in the 80s, oh man, what a vibe it would have been.
an economic powerhouse, it wasn't too hard to persuade multinational corporations
Economy
to set
booming.
up headquarters on the island. And by the 1990s, more than 10,000 firms were moving into Hong Kong every single year.
Oh yeah,
It
can't,
became
move,
one
can't
of the
do business in
world's
China.
leading financial centres. But as the clock ticked toward the end of the British rule, the future was starting to look uncertain. As the 1997 handover loomed,
97,
many
so it was
feared what would
90s.
happen once China took control. The communist regime was renowned for ruling with an iron fist, with media takeovers and asset seizures commonplace. Capital flight was inevitable. Investors and wealthy residents pulled hefty amounts of money out of
course.
the country, and within months, the Hang Seng index plunged by over 20%. Then, just as the transition was underway, another disaster struck. Asia hit a debt crisis. But beneath the surface,
Just like everywhere.
a deeper problem was brewing.
that's like the one thing where like if you really look at it within the context of just like the world, we really just created a system just to make people like stress over something. I believe in the Bible it does talk a little bit about how you can't, I believe you can't charge interest, or like, yeah, you can't charge like interest on people, or you can't like put debt out to others. And I'm not saying that as like a, not trying to say like the, not trying to get religious here in this sense, but I'm just saying like there is some common like things where it's like, why, where debt has just kind of been like this thing where people just get ruined. Like it was never a thing in the like the yeah, it was a thing all throughout human history. Like there was people who were debt collectors and stuff like that. In the Roman Empire, I know they weren't able to touch because it was like it was against Christianity or whatever. You weren't able to like give debt. So I know Jewish people did it a lot throughout the Roman Empire. They were big financiers even back then. So that I just, the whole thing about debt just drives me insane because like it just ruins so
With
many
just
people's
over
lives.
1,000
I mean,
square kilometers
everyone's
of
in debt
land,
pretty much.
Hong Kong was struggling
Especially
to
if you're
keep
a young
up with
person.
the growing wave of people chasing opportunity. By 1999, population density in the city had soared past 6,000 people per square kilometre, 150 times the global average, surpassing even London and New York. Since its boom period, the population had nearly tripled, but the land had stayed the same. Housing had become scarce and increasingly unaffordable. This was the era that gave rise to
look
Hong
at
Kong's
that.
cage homes.
How does someone
Tiny wire
live
mesh
there?
compartments crammed into overcrowded flats.
I mean, part of it I'm sure is like a vibe, like you're just chilling. Especially if you got look, there's the boys playing cards there, but come on, people
First
shouldn't
seen
be
as a
living
temporary
like that.
fix in the 1950s for the migrant boom, they became a lasting symbol of the city's housing crisis.
Yeah.
As property values climbed to some of the highest in the world, the dream of home ownership drifted further out of reach for the average worker. But that was just the beginning of the real nightmare. What would happen next turned a system which was unequal into one which was completely rigged. This video is brought to you by Manscaped, the brand revolutionizing male grooming. Their beard
I don't think I
and
use
balls bundle
Manscaped.
features
I
two
should, low-key.
high-performance tools, the Lawnmower
Help
5
trim up.
Ultra and the Beard Hedger, one for below the belt and one for above, both of which are
Is it
waterproof,
actually,
wireless,
like,
and built to
A
last.
good brand?
You get skin-safe blades,
Like, I'm not shitting, I'm
precision
genuinely
trimming,
asking. I
and
don't.
up to 60 minutes of cordless runtime. All the tools that you need to stay sharp without putting your most valuable assets at risk. It's grooming with efficiency and self-preservation in mind. Get 20% off and free international shipping with the code INVISIBLEHAND at manscaped.com. When China took over
I
Hong
definitely
Kong,
should
it
look into
inherited
that.
a city with
Help trim me up, you
but
know.
also laden with imperfections. Many thought that Hong Kong, and especially its outdated housing policies, would soon be a thing of the past. But the system Britain built to enrich the empire wasn't torn down by China. Instead, it was adopted and perfected. As the city reeled from the financial crash, Hong Kong's newly appointed government needed solutions fast. They had an economy to stabilise, businesses to keep afloat, and a population to reassure. So instead of reforming the system, they doubled down, slashing the top rate of income tax from 25% to just 16%. The logic was simple. Lower taxes would encourage consumer spending, drive demand, and keep the economic engine running. But there was a problem, a massive one. Hong Kong still had to pay for all the things that kept the country running. Buses, trains, and even schools all needed government money to survive, and with less tax revenue coming in and the same money being spent, they were on the brink of a financial...
Yeah, so instead of just reforming your housing market and fixing all that, just... I'm not like against slashing taxes for certain things, but when you kind of have like this weird mix of a social welfare state, taxes have to be there, right? Like if you're going to have resources where you're paying for via the government, you got to have some taxation in there in order to pay for shit. Just how it is.
So, in a moment of desperation, the government turned once again to the colonial land system and started taking advantage of it by selling government-owned land to generate revenue. They didn't hold back and sold heaps and heaps of land, bringing in around $20 billion every single year. For the government, this was the perfect fix. Land sales alone covered more than 10% of the government's entire budget, enough to fully fund the city's entire public healthcare system. The formula was simple. Keep selling land, keep the money flowing, and keep the system running. But this
Sell
gold
to the
rush
rich people.
wasn't for everyone. The average Hong Kong worker could barely afford rent, let alone buy land.
Was that his
So
house?
who was really snatching up all these million-dollar plots?
The big four
When leadership
families.
changes, opportunities present themselves. The collapse of the Soviet Union gave rise to the oligarchs, and Hong Kong was no different. A small, ultra-wealthy elite saw the opportunity of a lifetime and seized it.
Of course.
As the government
How
sold off
could
their
they?
land
Or how
at an
wouldn't they, you know?
unprecedented rate, a handful of powerful families quietly tightened their grip on Hong Kong's real estate market.
Of course.
Over time, 4 names stood above the rest: the Kwok, the Lee, and the Cheng families.
2 different leagues.
But their influence extends far beyond real estate. With near infinite wealth, they formed strong business ties with both the Hong Kong government and
They'll eventually just, what they do is they just toss money at each other too. Like, that's how they keep each other alive.
mainland Chinese authorities. In theory, Hong Kong runs on a free market capitalist system, but in practice, housing is no market at all. It's a monopoly controlled by a few people. Their dominance wasn't
Control
just about
where
property.
people live, you know?
It was about influence, control, and the ability to bend an entire city to their will.
Yep.
But just how powerful really are these tycoons?
Extremely powerful.
To understand the full scope of their dominance, let's take a closer look at their empire. The 4 families control these 4 property companies. They're more than just names. To the people of Hong Kong, they are the forces that shape the very skyline of the city and dictate the cost of calling their place home. Together, these 4 families have amassed a combined net worth exceeding $100 billion, more than the entire GDP of some nations. But their wealth isn't just measured in
Well, they are a
dollars.
nation,
They
pretty
own
much.
leverage over the market, the media, and the government.
Of course.
With that kind of power, the question is not if they will abuse it for profit, it's how they are going to do it. For years, these developers have mastered the art of market manipulation, strategically limiting the release of new apartments to keep supply tight,
Of
driving up the
course.
prices.
Like, technically, the U.S. government, if we really wanted to fix the housing market, we can pass something like a GI Bill, something similar, and we can build so many homes, too many homes, so many homes to the fact that, like, we would have probably extra. Like, that's how many homes we could realistically build in the U.S. to fix our housing problem. Everyone could get a house. Everyone could have a place to stay. Even the people who are just graduated. Like, we could do that. But why don't we? Because how would that affect all the... I'm not blaming old people here because I want to get that, separate that real quick. But when you look at the average age of Congress, how it's like, in its 50s and 60s, the average boomer typically owns 3 homes. Well, if the United States decides out of nowhere, or places like Hong Kong decide out of nowhere to fix these housing issues, what happens to everyone else's fucking property? It starts going down. Obviously, in some areas, they probably wouldn't be affected too much, but for the most part, if there's a bunch of new homes that enter the market, yeah, the value of homes would inevitably go down. But that means people are making less money, and the average home buying power, I think, right now is 40 years old.
Higher
Reached an all-time high.
and higher. This artificial scarcity
Compared to, like,
translates
being
into
in your
staggering
20s,
profit
like,
margins,
earlier,
among the highest
like I think
in the
like
world.
not even like 30
While
years ago.
property developers in countries like the US and the UK live off margins around 15%, these firms routinely enjoy margins of 30 to 50%, raking in billions annually. Their ability to control
government
supply
doesn't stop 'em.
not only artificially inflates the values, but also ensures that housing remains an increasingly unattainable luxury for many. To push their profits even further, they have been shrinking the size of apartments to extreme levels. With no
Like, people need to understand that, like, it just flipped. Like, before, like, back in the day, like, I'd say 80s, like, yeah, inflation was high, but there was I think inflation was a little high, I'm not too sure. But I do know is that it was flipped. Luxuries were more expensive back in the day. So people didn't, like, spend as much on their crap, but your necessities like food, housing, etc. were all cheaper. Versus now, it's flipped. Because companies know they can make money off of people's impulse buying. Like, they can just make more money on the little stupid shit. So yeah, that shit has now become cheaper, but all the necessities of life have now become more expensive. So it's just different now. It's changed.
Competition, nano flats, some as small as 120 square feet, barely enough room for a sink and a bed, are becoming an increasingly common trend amongst newly developed estates.
It's like a
For
closet.
many lower middle class Hong Kong
Like some people have a
residents,
closet bigger
these
than
boxes
that.
were now their only options, with an estimate of over 220,000 people now living in these flats. Though instant government action seems incredibly necessary, the sheer political influence of these firms completely stops any significant changes from being made.
Of course.
Land policies remain in their favour, while
Of
public
course.
housing and affordability measures are deprioritised.
It's
The
lobbying.
numbers tell a shocking story.
Their version
Last
of
year,
it.
the wealthiest 10% of Hong Kong households earned 82 times more than the poorest 10%. 5 years
And I'm relating this, or trying to relate this a little bit to American politics, but I want people to remember it's not a Republican versus Democrat. It's a class issue. Rich versus poor. People need to understand that. Not every single rich person is bad. Like, you can't generalize that all. But I can't sit there and say that this isn't a wealth issue.
ago, that number was merely half as large. For over a decade, Hong Kong has consistently ranked among the top 10 most unequal places on Earth, according to the Gini
Yeah,
Index.
USA is kind of in that
And
list
it's now
too.
surpassed every
So
other
is
country
Mexico.
in Asia,
Turkey's kind of high
a
in
region
Portugal?
already known
Damn.
for wealth divides. In a city of 8 million people, just 80 control 11% of Hong Kong's entire wealth. That's a higher
You guys, like, it's the same thing here. Like, what is it? Like 80% of the top, like 1% control like 80% of our market, the stock market.
concentration of wealth than Russia or South Africa, some of the most unequal nations in modern history. The rich grow richer simply by holding assets, while the working class fights just to keep a roof above their heads. And as property values soar, the gap between those who own land and those who rent it becomes insufferable. Economists have coined a new term for Hong Kong's paradoxical system, Pluto communism. Despite growing public outcry,
Never heard
the
of that.
government has remained silent, its actions minimal, and its solutions
Pluto communism?
ineffective. In 2024, Chief Executive John Lee announced so-called reforms for subdivided housing.
Bullshit.
It made headlines, but coffin homes were explicitly excluded,
Huh.
leaving the city's worst living
Oh
conditions
my
still
God.
completely legal in
It's like, what's the fucking point of even putting the bill out? I don't even care what it is. What's the fucking point of putting the bill out if you're just gonna fucking do that? Like, this is what I mean on why they wonder why young people, or hell, even fucking, there's plenty of Gen Xers, there's plenty of Gen Zers, there's plenty of millennials, there's probably a bunch of fucking baby boomers. Everyone. They wonder why people don't fucking trust the government. They really do. And this can be the people of Hong Kong as well. Like, they wonder why no one trusts the government over there, or their local government. Because we're not even talking about China, right at this point. We're talking about Hong Kong.
thriving. Rent
like, what-
control was
why
also
even-
dismissed,
Of
with officials
course!
claiming it would interfere with the market.
I'm not entirely against. Like, here's the thing: rent control is a little interesting because it can kind of go. It's a backwards. It's like it can be good at the same time. Like, yeah, it does cap off pricing, but then at the same time, it makes it harder for new buyers, right? Like, that's what we're seeing in New York and L.A. Like, you got people paying, like, they're living in the best parts of L.A. and they're paying $900 a month on rent. Well, yeah, so no shit. The renting market in L.A. and New York are crazy because those landlords and stuff. You know, they have to cap people off at a certain amount, and then they have to charge everyone else X amount of dollars more just to offset it because they want to make their money. And then typically a lot of times in these like rent controlled apartments, like landlords and stuff, they're not going to be putting investment down. They're not going to be actually fixing up the place. Like, they don't care to. There's no incentive for them to because you're capped off.
There were no relocation plans, no
But
safety net.
I can't really speak for specifically on the Hong Kong stuff, so I wouldn't know if it's, maybe it would work better there. Who knows?
Claiming it would interfere with the market. There were no relocation plans, no safety nets, just a silent understanding. If you couldn't keep up, you were pushed into a cage. But this crisis isn't inevitable. In fact, other cities have faced similar challenges
Yeah.
and found solutions. Take Singapore, a city with a population density the same as Hong Kong, yet virtually free from its housing nightmare. Why? Because decades ago, Singapore's government decided to take matters into their own hands.
Oh, wow.
It established the Housing and Development Board, which today builds and manages over 80%
Wow, government building housing.
of all homes, offering affordable, high-quality housing for all income levels. With abundant public housing,
I keep pausing it, more people would be okay with this if, like for example, people, like, just want a place to live. Like, I know people, like, if it's, like, lower income, like, people, especially if you move, like, a lower income group of people to, like, houses and stuff. I know just in my area, there was a bunch of people that were, like, mad because they wanted the local town wanted to build a Section 8 housing there. And I could have told you in that area that was going to get turned down. Like, the people were going to throw a fuss about it. But ultimately, like, my idea, and I even proposed it to my boss, and I said, hey, so what about this? And I just rolled it out. I go, well, what about this? And he goes, well, my idea is that why don't we just have a mix income? Kind of what in theory was. Yeah, there will be lower income people, but it's probably be capped at around like $50,000, maybe give or take 10,000, and then it will start there, and then it will cap out around like 100K. So the housing would be meant for specifically people who really need it, single family, like dual income, stuff like that. And I proposed that. I go, he's actually, I'm actually not opposed to that. It's weird because I think when people just think like, oh, we're just going to put a bunch of random people in a town who some aren't working, it's hard to convince people to just do that. And I'm not saying that it's good or bad. What I'm saying is you can convince people a little bit in certain areas. It's like, okay, what if we have it like where it is a wide range, but it is meant for people who desperately need help. Like, there has to be ways where we can get around this even here. Because if Singapore can fucking do it, why can't we do it here in America? And why can't Hong Kong do it?
Developers had no room to exploit renters. On the other hand, South Korea allows the free market to still operate.
Of course,
but
you got
puts
to.
checks on greed. Instead of allowing billionaires to hoard properties, South Korea introduced a massive property gains tax, reaching up to 50% of profits on multi-property owners.
That's
in
great.
Hong Kong,
how many homes in America? I think Connecticut is trying to propose something similar to that because they have a lot of people who own 2 to 3 homes and they're just not living in it. And then their towns are like ghost towns. Like mansions I'm talking about.
Experts have done the same, calling for reform to broaden the tax base, increase the land supply, and enforce transparency.
Of course.
But every suggestion was ignored.
Of course.
Because meaningful change would mean confronting the billionaires who profit from the crisis.
And the government,
Instead,
and they bought the
burden
government.
fell on the people, crushed by rising rents, shrinking spaces, and a government that chose wealth over welfare. The crisis is now severe. In 2023, there were more than 1,000 suicide deaths across Hong Kong, with 3 people a day taking their own lives because they simply couldn't bear the suffering. For much of its history, Hong Kong has been seen as a place where hard work led to success. Immigrants, entrepreneurs, and workers believed that if they put in the effort, they could carve out a better life for themselves.
So
But that
we're all
promise
told.
is now dead. The housing crisis has effectively ended.
And they wonder why people are looking for hope. They wonder why religion's growing, and they wonder why people want old America, and they wonder why people want certain things. Because you're killing the hope. You're killing the dream. The people don't believe anymore that they can put the work in and they're going to get the same benefits. It's just not how it is anymore, right?
Social.
I could talk about my personal experience of like 2 jobs downsizing on me. Busted my ass for them. I got told by one job that, hey, you are one of our best interns we've ever had. Literally said that to me. But then they followed it up with like, yeah, we're going through downsizing and there's nothing available. So it's kind of like one of those things where it kills hope. You're killing hope. And when you kill hope, people kind of just get depressed and then they don't want to. You don't be surprised when there's like radical changes and there's people being very reactionary to certain events.
Mobility. A university graduate entering the workforce today
is
would need
unemployed.
to save every penny of their salary for about 20 years just to afford a tiny apartment. Even professionals with stable jobs are stuck, living with parents into their 30s or crammed into shared micro apartments. Over 80% of Hong Kong's youth believe that they'll never own a home, and many are choosing to leave altogether. From 2020 to 2022,
America, I don't believe I'll own a home here.
140,000 people, mostly young, educated professionals, left the city in search of a future elsewhere. Hong Kong's crisis is not a unique case. It's a cautionary tale for global cities facing similar inequality, from Singapore to London to New York. real estate monopolization, and extreme inequality are growing problems
We need major
worldwide.
reform.
And if left unchecked, housing becomes
Hoping
less
that
about
Democrats
providing
were going to do
shelter
it for the last
and
4
more
years. They
about
didn't,
investment
and I don't think
opportunities for the wealthy.
Don's going to do it.
While
So
every city has its own circumstances,
we got a young
core
people got to
issues
wake up
remain the
there.
same. When housing becomes unattainable, so does economic stability for those who rely on it most. This isn't just a housing crisis. It's the result of a system built to protect wealth and power, no matter the cost. What began as a colonial land grab has evolved into a modern-day monopoly, refined under new rulers, but rooted in
It's pretty much like the same type of control, just instead of it being the British, it's like their own people doing it.
the same logic. Extract as much as possible from the many to benefit the few. In Hong Kong, inequality wasn't an accident, it was engineered.
Of course.
Today, billionaires own empires of land, while the working class is packed into metal boxes. This is a warning, because if we allow housing to remain a tool for speculation, if we continue to accept extreme inequality as normal, then Hong Kong's present may soon become everyone's future. The clock is now ticking, but the question is, what will we do about it?
Wow. Great video. And
This is London.
I think
At
this
first
video...
glance-
Oh, let me pause that. I think this video does a great job. Let me pull up this guy as a channel so everyone can go get a visual what it is. Well, how am I not subscribed? There you go. Yeah, this is honestly a hands down great video. I like to look at like some of these like I know like I said, I don't know everything about the Hong Kong situation, but I know a little bit enough to kind of like bullshit my opinion on it. And I mean that by like I like to relate these issues to America and how we can like we're all dealing with the same issue. Young people they feel like they got no hope. Young people in America feel like they got no hope. Young people in Europe feel like they got no hope. Young people in Europe trying to want to buy a house. Same thing as America. Same thing as Hong Kong. People want to eat. People want to live. People want to go explore. People want to go do things, but they can't because they're so financially burdened. And it's not just as simple as just go wake up and get a better job and go do this because people aren't hiring. Companies aren't hiring. And now you're just getting left with, I believe most college kids are still looking for jobs. Like myself. I'm working a bullshit job right now. I'm starting YouTube because I was like, why not? Let's get involved with this because I need something to do. I need something to keep my mind off of it. And I'll say that there's so many things that we can look now and go, wow, like a bunch of rich people control their main industries. Same thing happens here. Government does a lot of unchecking. Oh wow, same thing happens there. Government could be more involved, but they're not. Same thing happens there. So yeah, this video is great. This channel is great. Give this guy a follow. I'll try to put it in the description below for you. He's great. No, I love this. I've seen a few of his videos now. I'm surprised I wasn't even followed, so shame on me there. But yeah, great account. Great account. If you ever want to email him for questions, there's that too. So, all right, guys. Thanks.